Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to Northside Middle School, Burris. We're glad that you're here today. We are missing our friends over here in our vacant spot from Wilson, but we're glad some of their teachers are here to join us. So thank you for coming, and it's fun to get the groups together. We don't often get to do this, so maybe this is the start of many more times that we can be together. I just want to say this is a great honor to be chosen as a site for today's presentation and speaker. And there are several people that we need to thank, and you need to hear who all is responsible for bringing our presenter to you today. I would like to thank the community for positive influence in the Jewish studies from Ball State University. I'd like to thank the Provost's office from Ball State University, the Community Foundation of Muncie in Delaware County, the Ball Brothers Foundation, and I'd like to personally thank Dr. Brana for allowing talking to people to allow them to come to Northside. And I will tell you that I'm Mrs. Samuels, and I'm the principal at Northside. And these guys know that, but maybe you need to know who I am. So, just with that introduction, again, thank you for all those people, and I know Dr. Brandon is here, and we're glad that he's here with us. We're going to celebrate coming together today and hearing a message about determination and forgiveness. So I want you to think about those two words as you listen to our presenter. Again, determination and forgiveness are two words that I picked up from what we're going to learn. I want you to be an attentive audience. Make sure that everything you have is on the floor next to you, that you're not distracted by anything that you may have brought into the building with you. When it's raining and it's wet, so just put that aside, as if you're leaving the building, you're not going to put it back on, and it's just going to get wet again. So put everything aside and make sure that you're very attentive. If you have questions, we'll have some time after that you may ask a personal question. We'll bring the microphone around, so please listen and think about if there's something you'd like to know personally. If you listen today and you think this is so interesting, go home, get the parent and guardian that you live with, and hurry to Emmons Auditorium. She will be speaking again at 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock there will be a video. But you can make it by 4. So go home and get back in the car and come back over to Ball State. It is free. And your parents, guardians, grandparents, neighbors would like to hear that. I know I have people going from my family. So if you are interested, please hurry home and do that, okay? I am not going to take any more of our time. Our presenter is here and ready, and I have met her, and am just really thrilled to introduce her to you. So I'm going to step around the stage and bring her out to you.
Any of these things in front of me. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay. We don't need that thing. See, that's right in front of me. I don't like it. I'm actually going to put it on the floor. I'm going to teach people here who deal with all that equipment, and that is, for whom is that? Oh, that's you. Oh, that's right. Okay. All right. I won't shut it off. Excuse me?
Could you move it to the other side, please?
To the other side?
Yes.
Is that better? Modern technology. Do you understand it? I am very pleased to be here in Muncie at the middle school. My name is Eva Kaur, and I am a survivor of the Holocaust. My lecture is divided in 3 parts. Part 1, how I survived Auschwitz. Part 2, the lessons that I have learned in my life. And if we have time, I do not know at that time if we would have time for questions and answers. It was the dawn of an early spring day. Our cattle car came to a sudden stop. I could hear a lot of Germans yelling orders outside. Inside the cattle car, we were packed like sardines, and I could see nothing, but there was a little patch of gray sky through the barbed wires in the window. In the cattle car, there were about 100 people, including my father, Alexander Moses. He was 44. My mother, Jaffa Moses, was 38. My oldest sister, Edith, 14. My middle sister, Alice, 12. And Miriam and I, who were only 10 years old. As soon as we stepped down from the cattle car onto a platform that we called the selection platform, my mother grabbed my twin sister and me by the hand. We were her youngest children, and she was hoping that somehow, as long as she could hold on to us, that she could protect us. Everything was moving very fast. There was a lot of yelling, dogs barking, people crying. And I stood there on that selection platform in my childish curiosity. I turned around and trying to figure out what that place was, when I suddenly realized that my father and two older sisters disappeared in the crowd. Never ever did I see them again. As we were holding on to Mother for dear life, a Nazi was running and yelling in German, "Twins, twins." We did not volunteer any information because we had no idea what worked in that place. He approached my mother because Miriam and I were dressed alike and we looked alike, and he demanded to know if we were twins. And my mother didn't know what to say. She asked, "Is that good?" And the Nazi nodded yes, and my mother said yes. At that moment, another Nazi came, pulled my mother to the right, we were pulled to the left, we were crying, she was crying. All I really remember is seeing her arms stretched out in despair as she was pulled away. I never even got to say goodbye to her, but I didn't really understand that this would be the last time that we would see her. And all that took 30 minutes from the time we stepped down from the cattle car. Miriam and I no longer had a family. We were all alone, and we had no idea what would happen to us. We became part of a group of little girls, all twins. In our group, there were 13 sets of twins between the ages of 2 and 16, and one mother who by some miracle was permitted to stay with her 7-year-old daughters. We knew her because my mother liked to shop at their store, and I believe she liked to shop there because the two mothers always liked to talk, comparing notes about raising twins. I believe that on that long selection platform there were little boy twins, aged 2 to 16, and many other people, but I was so traumatized that I could only focus on my predicament. Our group was led to a huge building. We were ordered to undress, our clothes were taken away, and we sat naked for most of the day without knowing really what would happen to us. Our processing began late in the afternoon. We, the twins, were given short haircuts. The mother's head was shaved. Our dresses were returned with a huge red oil-painted cross on the back, and the mother was given striped prison uniforms. So to have our own hair and our own clothes seemed to be a privilege that we, the twins, were granted. Then they lined us up for registration and tattooing, and when my turn came, I decided to give them as much trouble as a 10-year-old could. 4 people restrained me, 2 Nazis and 2 women prisoners. While they heated a gadget, it looked like a writing pen, and with a needle, and they heated it over the flame of a lamp. When it got hot, they dipped it into ink, and then they burned into my left arm, dot by dot, the capital letter A dash 7063. My twin sister Miriam became capital A dash 7064. Auschwitz was the only Nazi camp that tattooed its inmates. My husband is a survivor of 4 years in Buchenwald. He does not have a tattoo. And when you will have a chance to see my tattoo, you might think it has faded. Incorrect. It was always like that. I was not a very cooperating victim. When I compared notes with my sister, she said that in addition to creating a general confusion, I bit the Nazi holding my arm. I am sure that that was possible, but I don't remember it. After all, I was raised to be a nice girl. And as we know, nice girls and nice boys don't bite. So I must have blocked it out of my mind. Once we were processed, we were marched throughout the camp, and we arrived at a building, a modular wooden horse barn without any windows, with barn doors. Inside, it was the filthiest and crudest place I have ever seen. The barrack is divided in two by a brick bench. On each side of the brick bench there is a walkway, and then on each side of the walkway there are 3-story bunk beds. Miriam and I were given a bunk bed on the bottom. It was covered with a thin straw mattress and a filthy blanket. And we haven't slept, we haven't even sat, except in the shower room. In the cattle car there was no room to sit, but we haven't stretched out or slept in almost 4 days. So we thought it would be a good idea to try to sleep. But I believe that human beings cannot function after such a traumatic day, because I kept tossing and turning. I couldn't fall asleep, and as I was tossing and turning, I noticed something big and dark moving on the floor. I began counting, 1, 2, 3, 4. By the time I got to 5, I jumped up screaming, "Mice, mice!" Coming from a farm, I have often encountered mice, and I was always scared of them. A girl from the top bunk with a silly kid, these are not mice, they are rats. And you better get used to them because they are everywhere. And they were. So now we couldn't even try to go back to sleep. We went to the latrine. As I entered the latrine, there on the filthy floor were the scattered corpses of 3 children. I have never ever seen anybody dead before. But to me the message was clear that that could happen to Miriam and me unless I did something to prevent it. So right then and there I made a silent pledge that I am convinced saved Miriam's life and mine, that I will do anything and everything within my power to make sure that Miriam and I shall not end up on that filthy latrine floor. From the moment we left the latrine, I did everything instinctively, and I did everything instinctively right. I never let any doubt or fear enter my mind. In my mind, I had an image of Miriam and me walking out of this camp alive. And I never let go of that image until the day we were liberated. Our daily routine. We would be awakened every morning at 5 a.m. with the screeching sound of a whistle. We would help some of the younger children put on their shoes, because we used to have shoes that you had to lace up. The 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, even the 6-year-olds. We never had to help anybody dress up because we never took our clothes off, since all we really had were our lives and the clothes on our back. Then we would go outside for roll call at 6 a.m. Summer, winter, blizzard, rain, it did not matter. And by the time winter rolled around, our dresses had holes in them as well as our shoes had holes in them. We had no sweaters, no coats, no jackets, no socks, nothing. And I have no idea, I cannot understand it, how we survived the bitter winter there. After roll call, we would go back to the barrack for Dr. Mengele's daily inspection. He would come in every day except Sunday, and that is the way we knew it was Sunday. He would count us every morning. He wanted to know how many guinea pigs he had today. After Mengele left, we would get breakfast. Breakfast was nothing more but a brownish liquid they called coffee. At noon, we would get a gooey stuff that looked like cream of wheat, but we couldn't spoon it, nor could we swallow it. I have no idea what it was, but I believe today that they gave us that gooey stuff just to torment us. And at night we would get a piece of bread about 2 inches, very dark, but it tasted okay, and it filled my empty stomach. After a few days in Auschwitz, I realized that at night I could sleep even though I was very hungry. But the days without any food in my stomach were agonizing. So I decided to save my bread at night for next morning. Next morning, my bread was gone, stolen by those huge rats. So I had a difficult decision every night. Should I eat my bread tonight and have something to eat? Or should I gamble and maybe have something tomorrow to eat? The Nazis could have given us the bread in the morning, as they did with the inmates who went to work. But we were not even given that much help. So after our brownish, lukewarm liquid called coffee, we would be taken for experiments. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we would be placed naked in a room for up to 8 hours a day. Every part of my body was measured, compared to charts, and compared to my twin sister. These experiments were not dangerous, but they were unbelievably demeaning. Even in Auschwitz, I couldn't cope with the fact that they made me feel like I was nothing more but a living piece of meat. And the only way that I could cope with that is by blocking it out of my mind. So the observation lab, as I call it, when we would spend 8 hours, I only remember that I couldn't wait for it to be over. On alternate days, on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we would be taken to another lab that I call the blood lab. There, they would tie both of my arms to restrict the blood flow. They would take a lot of blood from my left arm and give me a minimum of 5 injections into my right arm. The content of those injections we didn't know then, nor do I know today. But after one of those injections, I became very ill with a very high fever, a fact I desperately tried to hide. Because the rumor in the camp was that anyone taken to the hospital never came back. My next visit to the blood lab, they did not tie my arms for blood taking and injection. Instead of that, they measured my fever. And I knew I was in trouble. I knew I had a very high fever because I was trembling even as the August sun was burning my skin. In addition to that, my legs and arms were swollen and very painful, and I had huge red spots throughout my body. So they measured my fever and I was taken to the hospital. The hospital was another barrack filled with people who looked more dead than alive. Next morning, Dr. Mengele came in with 4 other doctors. He looked at my fever chart. He never ever examined me. All he did, he looked at the fever chart and then he declared, smiling sarcastically, he said, "Too bad. She's so young. She has only 2 weeks to live." I knew he was right, but I refused to die. So I made another silent pledge that I will do anything and everything within my power to make sure that I will prove Dr. Mengele wrong, I will survive and be reunited with my twin sister Miriam. For the following 2 weeks, I have only one clear memory. I remember crawling on the barrack floor because I no longer could walk, and I was crawling to reach a faucet with water at the other end of the barrack. This barrack wasn't even allocated water. And as I was crawling, I would fade in and out of consciousness, and I kept telling myself, I must survive, I must survive. After 2 weeks, my fever broke, and I immediately felt a lot better and stronger. It took me another 3 weeks before my fever chart showed normal, and I was released and reunited with the other twins and my twin sister Miriam. But the happiness of our reunion was short-lived. Miriam looked very sick. She looked just like the living dead I left in the barrack. And the way I understand it, everybody in Auschwitz was sick at one time or another. The conditions were so horrific, even if you were not injected with the germ. And the difference, I wanted to understand what made the difference between people who lived and people who died. And in my understanding is that everybody who survived had a little bit of luck or a guardian angel. And second, an unbelievable will to live. So Miriam and those people who have given up their will to live, the pictures that I remember from the camp, they would sit on a bench, on the floor, on the bed, and stare into space, aimlessly. So when I got back to the barrack, Miriam was sitting on the bed, staring into space. And I said, "What on earth happened to you? What have they done to you?" She said, "I cannot talk about it. I will not talk about it." And we didn't talk about Auschwitz, ever, until 1985. In 1985, I again asked her, I said, "Miriam, do you remember when I was taken to the hospital?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, what happened to you while I was in the hospital?" She said, "For the first 2 weeks after you were taken away, I was kept in isolation with Nazi doctors studying me 24 hours a day, and they were waiting for something to happen. I don't know what that was, and I don't know if it happened or it didn't happen." I said to Miriam, "It didn't happen. Because Mengele said, right when he met me, that I had only 2 weeks to live. Would I have died? Miriam would have been rushed to Mengele's lab, killed with an injection to the heart. And then he would have done the comparative autopsies. My diseased body, she was the control. In Auschwitz, everything was possible. In normal life, people would not take a set of twins, kill one, and then do the autopsies on both twins. But in Auschwitz, everything was possible. So I said to her, "What happened to you after the 2 weeks were up?" She said, "Well, I was taken back to the labs, injected with many injections that made me feel very sick." From a book, the only book written about Mengele's experiments Dr. Nisli's, a doctor's eyewitness account, I have learned, and from the Auschwitz Museum, that there were in Auschwitz 1,500 sets of twins used in the experiment. From the 1,500 sets, 3,000 children, only 200 survived. Most of them died in the experiment. So I said to Miriam, what do you know what happened with you after that? She said, after the injections I felt very, very sick. And after the war, she was always weaker than I was. We grew up for 5 years. We lived in Romania, in communist Romania. Then in 1950, we arrived in Israel. In Israel in 1957, Miriam got married and expected her first baby in 1960. She suddenly developed severe kidney infections that did not respond to any antibiotics. We were all puzzled, the doctors were puzzled. In 1963, she had her second baby, and this time the infections got worse, and again they couldn't treat it because her body did not respond to any antibiotic. So I said to Miriam, you have 2 children, that is very good, don't have any more children. Because every pregnancy is a life crisis. But she didn't listen to me. She had a third child, and after her third child was born, her kidneys started to deteriorate, and by 1987, she had to go on dialysis or have a kidney transplant. As a registered nurse, she did not want to live on dialysis. So I donated my left kidney. We were a perfect match. A year after the transplant, Miriam developed cancerous polyps because all the kidney transplantees and all organ transplantees must be given anti-rejection medication. So Miriam was given anti-rejection medication only 1 year after the transplant, and there were the polyps. I begged her to try to somehow figure out what to do. I donated the kidney that wasn't really working very well. The doctors were trying to find out why among 2,000 patients that they have used, that they have transplanted kidney, Miriam was the only one to develop cancerous polyps. They said, could you find your files from Auschwitz? We tried, I tried. We never found our files from Auschwitz because they felt that something that was injected into Miriam in Auschwitz combined with the anti-rejection medication to create the cancer. By June 6, 1993, the cancer metastasized everywhere and Miriam died. I will take you back to the camp for a brief observation because it's very important for me to tell you how does it feel to be a child in Auschwitz and how does a 10-year-old child cope, because children cope completely differently than teenagers and grown-ups. Children lose their point of reference. Teenagers do not. So when I was in Auschwitz, I thought that the whole world was a big concentration camp, that everybody in the world lived in miserable conditions, surrounded by Nazis day and night, starving to death. That is the way the world was. Until end of August of 1944, where an airplane appeared over the skies of Auschwitz. It was flying very low. I even could see the American flag on one of the wings. That was the first time for me to realize that somebody was trying to free us. That gave me hope and determination to live one more day, survive one more experiment. The air raids continued and increased. By the end of September, we had 2 air raids a day. And I just figured for myself, I thought the good guys must be winning and the bad guys must be losing. And you know what? I was right. Suddenly our experiments dropped from 6 days to 5 days. By October we had 3 air raids, and the experiments dropped from 5 days to 4 days, and by the end of November we had 4 air raids a day, and all the experiments stopped. Do we have the faintest idea how 4 air raids a day feels like? It feels like a continuous battlefield, and even I could tell that that cannot last much longer, that someday soon we will be free and we will go home. But we had no idea how that would happen. Nothing happened until early January, when the Nazis one evening told us, everybody out of the barracks, we are taking you deep into Germany to protect you from the fighting. And I thought to myself, I didn't like the Nazis when they were winning the war, because they were mean. I thought they would be a lot meaner now that they were losing the war, and I didn't want to be near them. So I decided to stay in our barrack. And next morning we woke up, we opened the barrack doors, and all the Nazis disappeared. All the guard towers were empty. We were on our own. From the 150,000 inmates, only 8,500 remained. We, the grown-ups, cut the barbed wire so all of us could organize. And organizing camp language meant stealing from the Nazis. What we needed to, and I won't call it stealing, I'm going to refer to it as organizing. What we needed to organize was bread, water, and blankets. So one day I was in the kitchen loading up with a lot of loaves of bread when we heard a strange sound. A sound of a car. No one had cars there but the Nazis. So when we went outside, I noticed a vehicle like a jeep. 4 Nazis jumped off, took out their machine guns, and they began spraying bullets in every direction. The last thing I remember was the barrel of the machine gun about 3 feet from my head, and I faded away. I woke up sometime later. I tried to feel my legs, I still could. And I looked around. Everybody seemed to be lying on the ground. There were piles of people. I reached out and touched one of them, and her body was ice cold. And this is when I realized that I had a guardian angel, and I fainted long before the bullets hit me. I raced back to the barrack where Miriam was watching our belongings and shared with her just what happened. We were so sad that people died close to the liberation. They survived so many months or years in the camp. And second, we wondered, why did the Nazis come back? That wasn't good news. Well, we found out. In the middle of the night, the Nazis blew up the gas chambers, the crematorium, and they were trying to eliminate the evidence. We had flames shooting from the roof. We could not stand the heat. We had to walk outside, and when we walked outside, the same 4 Nazis were waiting for us, ordered us to march. Anyone who couldn't walk fast enough was shot on the spot. We arrived in Auschwitz I, which is much smaller than Auschwitz II. We arrived there about 1 a.m., and we raced for the two-story building for safety. And the Nazis couldn't take us any further because the Allies were outside the city limits. So there was very heavy fighting in the area. My biggest problem in Auschwitz I was there was nothing to drink. We were very smart survivors. There was no snow on the ground. We would have melted the snow and boiled it as water, but there was nothing to melt. So in sheer despair, I went to the nearby river. I broke the ice, lowered the container tied to a string, and when I looked up across the river bank, there was a little girl. I could not believe my eyes. She was about my age, dressed in beautiful, clean clothes. She had braided hair with a ribbon, and she was carrying a school bag. That really blew me away. That was the first time that I realized that in this big, big mixed up world, there were children who looked like children and who went to school. She looked at me too. I was dressed in ragged clothes, swarming with lice. And the only school I was attending was a school of survival. A few days later, everything was quiet. And we thought this would be the day we would be free. But we didn't know how that would happen. It was late in the afternoon when a woman on January 27, 1945, a woman ran into the barrack about 4:30 p.m., yelling at the top of her voice, "We are free! We are free!" Wonderful. I looked outside, I couldn't see anything. I had to verify for myself that there was something happening. So I went downstairs from the two-story buildings. It was snowing heavily, I couldn't see very well. I stood there about half an hour, when at a distance I could see lots of people, and they were all wrapped in white camouflage raincoats, and they were smiling from ear to ear. And the most important thing was that they didn't look like the Nazis. We ran up to them, they gave us chocolate, cookies, and hugs. And that was my first taste of freedom. For me to realize that Miriam and I were alive, that my little promise to myself that I will survive Auschwitz, that Miriam and I both will survive, was an unbelievable experience. I want to thank you all for listening to my story. It's a very shortened version of a very long story. And the reason that I feel particularly privileged to talk to young people, because I want to share with you the lessons that I have learned in my life, and I call them life lessons. Life lesson number 1, never ever give up on yourself or on your dreams. I never gave up on my life while I was in Auschwitz. I did not know how to survive Auschwitz. And here I am, 70 years later, telling you my story. I realize, as I look at your young faces, that growing up is very hard. And I believe it's very hard even if you live in the United States, even if you have loving parents who buy you all kind of designer clothes, jeans with holes in them, right? And even if they are wealthy enough to buy you all the modern gadgets, even then, every single one of you here wonders, how will I fit into this big, big mixed up world? Will I be able to accomplish in life what I set out to do? And I can tell you one thing, if you give up, nothing will happen. On the other hand, if you keep hammering away at it, your wonderful minds will come up with answers that will work. I also want you to remember that there is always hope after despair, and there is always a tomorrow after disaster. And if we don't give up on ourselves and or on our dreams, we can accomplish great, wonderful things in life. Life lesson number 2 deals with prejudice. One of the reasons that Hitler was successful in rising to power is because of the Great Depression. And in my opinion, economic problems, depressions, or other economic problems are the seed for genocide. That is a reason. Look around in the world, because I talked to survivors of Rwanda, they had the same problem. So we have to learn from the past how to prevent genocide, right? Hitler rose to power. He promised the German people that he was going to solve their problems. And instead of solving the economic problems of Germany, he decided it was much faster to blame it on the Jews, use prejudice. And that is a second, and that is an old genocide prevalent. Well, prejudice is still with us today, and I am prejudiced. I will confess to you. I do not like the way you look. As I look at you, I see red, green, burgundy, yellow, blue, white, all kind of rainbow colors, maybe pink, orange. If I ruled the world, I would put you all in uniforms. How would you like that? I know, it's a terrible thing to wear uniforms. Because what I understand, as you get to classroom in the morning, you all compare with one another your outfit. Somebody has a new outfit, you pay attention to it. And I have a pet peeve. I absolutely detest young girls wearing low-cut blouses. I don't like it in junior high, in high school, or in life. And I can tell you what I am. You are all very much influenced by Hollywood. And if I could pass a law, I would want the Hollywood movie stars and singers, such as Madonna, Miley Cyrus. Oh, you are all laughing. Oh, you are not trying to emulate her, or Beyonce. These are all very wealthy people, very famous people, and people who do not realize that they are serving as a role model to young people like you. They are flaunting their boobs and they are flaunting their tush. And you are trying to emulate that. That's a disgrace. If I were a movie star, I would be very responsible, dress modestly. I would still could serve as an example to you, as a role model. And you're all trying to be sexy and Hollywood movie stars. Oh, I know, the guys are really liking the low-cut blouses, and they pretend they don't see. They look at everything. I don't like long hair, guys with ponytails, shabby hairdos, and I see here quite a lot of it. I don't like guys with earrings. I don't like anybody with tattoos, nor do I like body piercings. And then the worst of the worst are the unbelievable, ugly, baggy pants. Why would anybody wear baggy pants? I was invited to lecture at a local high school in Terre Haute, and I am heading to the auditorium through the long hallway, and in front of me were 3 young boys with very baggy pants. The crotch was the height of the knee. They were holding on to the pant, and the bottom of their pants were shuffling and cleaning the hallway. Well, I was walking behind them, trying to understand what on earth were these young people doing, when one of them dropped a book, and then he had the audacity to bend down and pick it up. He let go of his pants, and I can tell you that I saw places where the sun never shines. So do you think that uniform would be better? I think so. I was shocked. In my school system, don't they have any dress code? But teachers are telling me that they are very difficult to enforce. So as I went to the auditorium, I went up to the teacher who invited me, and I told him what happened, and I said, these pointed to the 3 young men. I said, they look like bums. And why would anybody want to look like a bum? So I said to him, I think that they are drug addicts. They only care about their drugs. I mean, they look bum. So he said to me, no, they are very good students, and they have never used any drugs. I was shocked. I could not believe that these kids were not on drugs. But I realized that even I have to get to know the person, and I am making an effort. Even though I don't like baggy pants, I don't like sloppy hairdos, I don't like the technicolor in school, nor do I like body piercing, and all these things I do not like. I realize that I have to make an effort. And if I am going to make an effort to judge each person on their merits and make a difference in removing prejudice from my own life, I think that I can do it one person at a time, and everybody can do one person at a time. We can work at eliminating prejudice. Life lesson number 3, I have forgiven the Nazis, I have forgiven everybody. And if anybody would have asked me 20 years ago today, if I was going to forgive the Nazi, I would have told you, please find a good psychiatrist and have your head examined. Because you are crazy. I had no intention ever to forgive anybody. And I don't know if you have seen my documentary, Forgiving Dr. Mengele. They are saying there that I have been thinking about forgiveness. Incorrect. What happened really was after Miriam died, I had tremendous difficulty coping with her death, and about a month later, unrelated to her death, I received a telephone call from a professor at Boston College who told me, Eva Kor, I have heard you speak about Nazi medicine, and I want you to come to Boston College and lecture to some doctors. And I told Dr. John Michalczyk that I love to lecture to doctors. And he said, why is that? I said, well, simply, I go to the doctors tell me I'm too fat, which I am. I eat the wrong food. I don't exercise enough, and then after they chew me out, I have to pay them. So I told Dr. Michalczyk that I would like to tell the good doctors what they do wrong, because in my opinion, doctors do plenty of things wrong too, and after I chew them out, I look forward to them paying me. That is my way of getting even with the doctors. So he said to me, okay, Eva, when you come to Boston, it would be really, really nice if you could bring with you a Nazi doctor. Stunned at such a request, I immediately blurted out, I said, where on earth do you think I can find one of those guys? Last time I looked in the yellow pages, they weren't advertising that. There is no advertising of Nazi doctors. So he said, think about it, maybe you come up with some kind of an idea. And I remembered, next day that the last project that Miriam and I worked on was a documentary about the Mengele twins produced by a German television network. And in that documentary that aired in 1992, there was a Nazi doctor from Auschwitz. His name was Hans Munch. He was not my doctor, but from the documentary I understood that he was a friend of Dr. Mengele. So I figured if he was alive in 1992, that he might be alive in 1993, and I faxed a letter to Germany asking them to give me Dr. Munch's telephone number in the memory of Miriam, and they did. We contacted Dr. Munch to come to Boston, but he said he was not. Instead of that, he was willing to meet with me at his house. So on August 20, 1993, I arrived in Germany near Munich with friends and 2 camera crews, and I was very scared. What I remembered about Nazi doctors, I really didn't want to experience again. But I was curious that maybe I will learn something about our experiment. And I was curious, why was this Nazi doctor willing to meet with me? He treated me with the utmost respect, kindness, and consideration. Unfortunately, he knew nothing about our experiments. But he gave me a good interview for my Boston conference, and then out of the blue I said to Dr. Munch, by any chance, do you know anything about the operation of the gas chambers? And he immediately said, this is a nightmare that I live with every single day of my life, and went on describing the operation of the gas chamber. The gas did not come from the shower heads. The shower room was cleaned, polished. They would even spread perfume as people were entering the shower room to take a shower. Once the shower room was packed, the doors would close hermetically. Dr. Munch was stationed outside, looking through a peephole, and he saw what happened. The gas came from the outside through the roof in a shape of a canister with Zyklon B. Zyklon B looks like pellets of white gravel. So the canister was opened outside, the content dropped into the shower room. It operated like dry ice. The gas was rising from the floor. People were trying to get away from the rising gas, climbing on other people, and the strongest people ended up on the top of the pile. Dr. Munch saw it from outside, and when the people on the top of the pile stopped moving, he knew that everybody was dead, and he would sign one death certificate. No names, just the number of people, 500, 1,000, 2,000. I immediately told him that this was a very interesting information. I have never ever heard about it, never seen it in any documentary, and I asked him to come with me to Auschwitz in 1995, that we are going to observe 50 years to the liberation of the camp, and I wanted him to sign a document at the ruins of the gas chamber about what he knew about the operation of the gas chamber. And I also wanted it signed in the company of witnesses, so nobody could ever deny that that was not signed by Dr. Munch. And he told me immediately, I would love to. I did not know it was going to be so easy, so I got back to United States, to Terre Haute, Indiana, very excited that I will have a document signed by a Nazi. I wanted to thank him. I had no idea how to thank a Nazi doctor. And I didn't know where to look for any ideas. I didn't want to tell anybody that I wanted to thank him, because I was afraid they would discourage me from doing it or they would call me crazy. So I went to the local Hallmark shop, and I went to the section that dealt with thank you cards. And I read card after card for over 2.5 hours. Then two ladies came up to me and said, "You've been reading those cards for a long time. Are you finding what you are looking for?" I said, "Not really." So they said, "What are you looking for? Maybe we could help you." I said, No, thank you very much, and I left the card shop, but I could not give up my idea. So I went back to life lesson number 1. For the next 10 months, while I was cooking, cleaning, doing the laundry, or driving the car, I kept asking myself, what can I give this Nazi doctor? How can I thank this Nazi doctor? Lots of ideas popped into my head. None were appropriate until 10 months later. Very simple idea. How about a letter of forgiveness from me to Dr. Munch? I immediately knew that that was a meaningful gift for Dr. Munch. But what I discovered for myself was life-changing. I discovered that I, the guinea pig from Auschwitz, had the power to forgive. No one could give me that power, and no one could take it away. So I began writing my letter of forgiveness. It took me another 4 months, and then it occurred to me that somebody might read my letter. My spelling in English is atrocious, so I called my former English professor from Indiana State University to correct my letter, and we met about 3 times, and she corrected it, but third time she said to me, "Eva, you need to forgive Dr. Mengele. Your problem is really with Dr. Mengele." I tried to debate that, but she said, "Do me a favor when you go home tonight. Pretend that you are talking to Mengele and telling him that you forgive him, because I want to know how it will make you feel." So when I got home, I said, "Dr. Mengele, you son of a gun, no good, you monster, but I forgive you." And I said, wow, I actually have the power to forgive the God of Auschwitz. I am not hurting anybody, so why couldn't I do it? And if I forgive Mengele, the worst of the worst, I might as well forgive everybody who has ever hurt me. So this is the way we arrived in Auschwitz. I came with my children. Dr. Munch came with his son, daughter, and granddaughter. He signed his document. I read mine and signed it, and I immediately felt that all the pain that I carried around for 50 years was lifted from my shoulder. I was no longer a victim of Auschwitz, nor was I a prisoner of my tragic past. Forgiveness, for everybody to understand, it's not to help the perpetrator. Forgiveness is to help the victims heal themselves. If we understand that, sometimes people are very aggressively opposing my ideas, and particularly many survivors. And I was meeting with a Holocaust scholar a few months ago, and he said to me, in Jewish culture, tradition, and maybe in other traditions, you do not forgive somebody unless they repent and ask for forgiveness. I said, wow, that brings to my mind a strange idea. I said, do you think that Hitler and Mengele would repent and ask for forgiveness? And he told me, no, I don't think so. I said, and if they don't repent and ask for forgiveness, what does it mean for me? Do I remain a victim for the rest of my life? He said, well, I don't know that. Because suddenly I think my ideas were making sense. And I told him, I refuse to be a victim. I will forgive, and I have. And I hope that all victims in the world realize that they have the power to forgive. Forgiveness, in my opinion, is an act of self-healing, self-liberation, and self-empowerment. It has nothing to do with the perpetrator. Congratulations, you survived my lecture. You're free. I don't know. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for questions. If not, I think we have books somewhere, and you can come buy a book, take a picture, get my signature, whatever. And the book, if you buy a book, I want you to know that all the proceeds go to Terre Haute, Indiana, to the Holocaust Museum. That it will be next year, 20 years since I opened it, in the memory of my twin sister. Thank you. Mrs. Jack's class?
Mr. Moss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I read you the book, Little Eva and Miriam in first grade, right? And you remember that?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, what did you get out of it?
It's not what you said. It's not at all what I used to remember. You were a lot more upfront because I think you understand it older now and you're
Right.
on with it. But yeah, I really respect you for it, and I've been to Camels before too.
Well, thank you very much. Any other questions? You don't have to run that past you. That is not, you are not running for principal. You are already the principal. Okay. All right. Speak clear and loud into the microphone.
When you were in Auschwitz, did you make any friends who you ended up not seeing again?
Well, that is a very sweet and innocent question. Very sweet and innocent. It shows me how little you really understand the mentality of a child who is fighting to survive. No. I never made friends with anybody. I never went up to any other child and said to them, oh, my name is Eva Moses. What is yours? Because you have to understand the mentality of children, who, maybe even grown-ups, I don't know. Dying in Auschwitz was very easy. Surviving took up all the energy that we had. There was no room in my life to worry about friendships, to worry about seeing people die. I had to keep all my energy and all my mental capacity to figure out how will I steal that piece of bread that's laying there. before somebody else grabs it? How will I try to stay alive and not get sick? Miriam and I, the only help that we had, that between Miriam and I, we kept humanity alive. She would steal bread for me, and she would she saved her bread while I was in the hospital. She sent the bread with Mrs. Changery. For 1 whole week she didn't eat because she heard that I got no bread whatsoever. So we kept the little piece of humanity alive, but there was no more energy in a child's life than to try to stay alive. Therefore, grown-ups, I have heard that they made friends, but I have never heard among the children who were in the experiment that anybody made any friends. That was a fact. Yes.
Do you think there are records of what Mengele did to you?
Excuse me?
Do you think there are records of what Mengele
Oh, I
did?
am 100% convinced. That's a very good question. Mengele's experiments, if we really understand it, they were in studying two particular things: how to create blue-eyed blondes in multiple numbers. That's the reason they needed twins. And second, germ warfare. You injected one twin with a germ, that twin died, you killed the other twin, and you saw how the germs or the disease work. In normal life, you cannot do it. But in Auschwitz, they could do any of these experiments. Now, I can tell you that when I got back from Auschwitz in 1985 at the 40th anniversary, I ended up in the hospital, happened to have the mumps. I don't know how that happened. And I was quite sick with it. On maybe the second week I was there, I was still swollen. I received 2 telephone calls from 2 former GIs who were stationed in Berlin in the former Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Genetic Studies. The experiments in Auschwitz were run by the most prestigious German scientific institution called the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. And any of you who wants to know more about it, you simply can Google Nazi medical experiments or Mengele's Nazi medical experiment, and you will get a lot more information on it. They said that they loaded up files of Mengele's experiments and sent them to United States. I was so mad at both of them told me the same thing. I said to them, if United States would have those files, they would give it to us. I was very naive. I believed that people always do the right thing. But I realized 6 months later, when I saw a documentary about the experiments done on American GIs by the Japanese, and they appeared on television on a program, and one of the secretaries who was with General MacArthur and signed the papers that United States would not prosecute those doctors in Japan. In return, they wanted the files. So I said to myself simply, if United States needed those files more than prosecuting the doctors, not as the Japanese doctors who did it, why on earth would they bother? These are American GIs. Why would they care anything about some Jewish kids who were used in experiments? I believe and I have enough proof. I know one fact, that Mengele didn't die in 1979, as the report of the Justice Department said. I believe that the files are in United States in the War Department. I have forgiven the Nazis, I have forgiven Mengele, I have forgiven the Justice Department, I have forgiven other lot of people because I made more enemies than I ever knew. By the way, I was looking for those files and I protested in the Capitol Rotunda in 1986, May 6, 1986. I was arrested and wrapped up, and they tore my rotator cuff. I cannot raise my right arm higher than that. I forgive everybody. I cannot change that. I understand that United States was trying to win the Cold War against the communists, and they needed all the information that they wanted. That is the way it is. Okay, I didn't really want to get into any controversial issues, but you wondered about that, so I am telling you, I am 100% sure that someday you will be grown-ups and the files will come to light. I want you to look and read them. And you know I told you so that it would happen. Okay?
Thank you. We have to get Mrs. Ford to her next.
Yeah, and I need to also, I need to take a nap because I've been up since 5 a.m. today. And because of the rain, I couldn't sleep on the drive here. Before my next lecture, I need to take half an hour nap. Otherwise, falling asleep is not very exciting. Okay, thank you very much.
Northside students have seats. We're going to dismiss more students 2 rows at a time, and there are some of our Northside students have a token for you.
Community Focus would like to thank the following underwriters for their help and support with our productions. Put your business up for everyone to see. Hometown Outdoor Advertising, 288-9000. Parson Mortuary Incorporated, 801 West Adams Street, Muncie, Indiana, 765-747-1100. Muncie Sanitary District, serving Muncie since 1965, 300 North High Street, Muncie, Indiana, 765-747-4863. This show is produced by Millennium Productions Incorporated. Thanks for watching.